A number of years ago, I was talking to Dr. Irene Davis, who is sort of the godmother about natural movement and footwear. And she said, if we just got kids wearing minimalist shoes, in 20 years, we would not be treating adults for the billions of dollars of problems they currently have with their feet and everything above. Well, we're going to be diving into that and many more things, I'm sure, on today's episode of the Movement, the podcast for people who want to know the truth about what it takes to have a happy, healthy, strong body, starting feet first, because, those things are your foundation. And we also break down the propaganda, the mythology, pardon me, sometimes the outright lies you've been told about what it takes to run or walk or hike or play or do yoga or CrossFit, whatever it is you like to do, and to do that enjoyably, efficiently, effectively. Did I say enjoyably? Yes, I did. It's a trick question. Because if you're not having fun, you're not going to keep it up. So, do something
Right.
that's having fun. I'm Stephen Sashen from ZeroShoes.com, your host of the Movement podcast. We call it that because we are creating a movement about natural movement, letting your body do what it's made to do without getting in the way. And the movement part, the moving it forward, that's all about you. It doesn't take any effort. It's really easy. It's all what you know how to do. Just give us a thumbs up and a like and a review and a share and hit the bell icon on YouTube. I mean, you know the gist of it. If you want to be part of the tribe, just subscribe. And also go to www.jointhemovementmovement.com to find previous episodes, to be alerted about new episodes, and to find all the places you can find us on social media and wherever podcasts are podcastable. All right. That's all the intros. So I'm not going to introduce my next guest because, I hate doing that because I never say things that are as interesting as them. So tell people who you are and what you're doing here.
You are always very interesting, Stephen. My name's Koby Deane, and I'm the author and illustrator of the children's book, I Go Barefoot.
I had one sitting on my desk when I left last week. It was sitting on my desk here and then it disappeared. So there you are. I go
There you go.
barefoot.
It's probably backwards, but
No,
anyway.
looks
Is
totally correct. Yeah,
readable? Okay, cool.
it is exactly
Yeah.
correct. So tell people about this book and why you did it.
Yeah, I was inspired. I like to go barefoot myself, and I wanted to create a book that would inspire kids and parents about the fun and positive aspects of going barefoot. I think a lot of times there's just this like fear about, oh my gosh, what's going to happen if you don't have shoes on your feet? And, it was just almost paralyzing. And there's a lot of things that we'll probably discuss that stem from problems that stem from that mindset. So when I created the book, I love the subject and I wanted it to be fun and positive because there's just too much negative about it, or just even our mindsets, like, oh no, I can't do that, So that's why I did it.
So I've noticed. So wait, where are you located? I can't remember.
I live in North Carolina with my family.
So interesting. Neither of us are in places that people typically think of as barefoot friendly, like basically a beach or somewhere that's warm all the time. And I know that, and I bring that specific example up because when I'm like walking around barefoot in Costco, which I do often, I've had kids come up and look at me and say to their, mom or dad, "Hey, that guy's not wearing any shoes." And if the parents are hip enough to do it, they'll say to the kid, "Well, go ask him about that." And my response is, "Have you ever been to the beach?" And they say, "Yeah." And I go, "Do you wear shoes at the beach?" They go, "No." I go, "Well, just pretend to we're at the beach." And to the parents, I'll say, since I'm in Colorado, just pretend we have post-earthquake beachfront property. So I spent a lot of time barefoot all seasons. But talk to me about how you, found yourself spending more time barefoot. What was the inspiration and what'd you notice when you started doing that? And last but not least, what's it like doing that in North Carolina? Not the most, depending on where you are, not necessarily the most open-minded state in the country. And I say that as someone who lived there for 5 years.
Yeah, I heard that. I was listening to the podcast about your Duke experience. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I've always when I was younger, I didn't go barefoot as much as I do now. I had a mom who's very protective, I guess, or she would just say, oh, you need to put your shoes on, etc. It was kind of like the default, right? And so as I could make my own choices as I grew up, I was a lot happier that way. I just didn't like the feeling of shoes on my feet. And there were some hurdles, like, sometimes you just wonder like what other people will think of you, or, but I just pushed past that. I just knew that, it was just part of who I was. And yeah, so that's kind of my
Do you
journey in a
still
nutshell.
do you still find yourself having the thoughts that people will think you're crazy or fill in the blank, but you just don't care that those thoughts come up, or do they not come up?
So here's what I found, that if it's a confidence thing. So if I'm in an environment where, if I'm going to a store and I choose to be barefoot in the store, I'm not going to make a big deal about it. I'm not trying to make a statement. I'm just, that's just part of who I am. So I'm just going in, and I'm not looking at my feet, and I'm not looking around, like people wonder what people are thinking of me, because when you do that, it's like you're a magnet, an attention magnet. But if you're, pushing your cart through the store, and you're saying, okay, I need to go this section, and you're just not, it's just like as if you had shoes on.
Yeah,
You had the confidence, to be barefoot in that environment. I find people don't really even pay attention, for the most part.
interesting.
And and sometimes, okay, like here's an interesting story. Like you were talking about your kids in Costco. So I was in one of the big box home improvement garden centers about a year or two ago, and I was, barefoot. And so I was walking past like a grandma and her young grandson. He was probably about, I don't know, 7 to 10 anyway. And the funny thing, he said to her as I passed by, he says, I hate wearing shoes. Yeah. And I think it gave him a voice, in a way, gave him an opportunity to dialogue about how he really felt. I'll give you another example. Okay, I go to a chiropractor, and I'll go there barefoot. And one day we were waiting for the chiropractic office to open. We're standing around. There was a couple people, a couple older ladies, a man. He didn't say too much, but one of the women said, was this really, she was like, oh, that's really amazing that you're going barefoot. I said, yeah, well, this is part of what who I am. And she said, well, thank you for being brave
Hmm.
and being a leader in that, because honestly, I wish I could be as brave as you were. So sometimes it just takes that, that confidence that we have in ourselves. This is not a wrong thing to do. It's a very natural part of living. And, and it inspires others, to that they would want to do it as well.
Have you ever it's been a while since I've been in this situation, but have you had a situation where you were hassled for being somewhere barefoot, and how did you respond?
Oh, this is a great story. This is a great story.
Sorry,
Okay.
Paul, and for anyone listening, the moment that I finished the question, you got so ridiculously excited. That was wonderful to see. So I'm looking forward to the story.
So I was in an airport. Okay. Not a huge it was an international airport, but not a huge one. And so I had just left my wife at the gate, to be checked in. And I was kind of like standing out in a hallway because you couldn't go past a certain point. And I was waiting to hear back from her on the cell phone about, she got on and stuff like that. So as I'm standing there minding my own business, I guess she was a stewardess or somebody walked by, and she was like, the matron. All right. She was like, where are your shoes? And I just politely said I didn't wear any. And she says, you need to wear shoes in this airport. You cannot be here barefoot in this airport. So my reaction was this. I said, wow, okay, thank you very much for telling me. Thank you for taking the time to tell me that. And, so much. Have a good day. And she was like, I guess she was expecting like an argument or something like that. And so, so I said that, it diffused her. And, she was like, oh, okay, well, yes, bye. And I said, like, have a good day. And it was just like over, and I just continued to stand there. I think I moved off to the side so I wasn't like out in the open, at that point. But, it was just, our response is critical,
Yeah.
in I don't know, navigating through that situation. I mean, I just put myself in a very, I wanted to be gracious.
Mm,
Because I didn't want to be a jerk about it, but I
you're,
didn't also want her to intimidate me either,
yeah,
because I knew that there was no real rule about that. But I was just being polite, and well, thank you for taking the time to tell me.
yeah, you're a better man than I. The last time I was in a local grocery store, and one of the people said, you can't be in here in bare feet. I said, why? She said, it's a health code issue. I said, it's actually not, just so you know. There's no
Yeah.
health code about it. And she said, well, it's about sanitation. I said, I'm really not worried about my feet getting dirty.
Like when was
That
the
was
last
not
time
what she
you
was
picked up?
expecting.
Right. I mean, you're not picking up the lettuce with your feet. In fact, you're picking up the lettuce with your hands, which are
Right.
probably just as unsanitary as your feet are.
Oh, no, 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 much, much more.
Probably,
Someone
right?
someone told me that there was some study that they read that like the most unsanitary thing in a grocery store is the handles on the carts you're pushing because they
Right.
just never get cleaned.
Yeah.
But it cracks me up. It's like I'm much more attentive to how clean my feet are than I am to how clean my shoes might be.
Yeah, that's right.
That struck me as a good one. My favorite. What was my favorite one? Oh, and Whole Foods, which ironically they've hassled me a couple times. And
Unbelievable.
just as they're hassling me, and I said, what's the problem with being bare feet? And they said, well, you could step on something. And at that point, somebody walks by with their dog, and I went, well, what about the dog stepping on something? And there's just no response to that. So I mean, I haven't really been hassled. My favorite thing is if I wear shoes, and people have probably heard me say this if they've listened to this before, I'll wear mismatched colors, which I'm doing right now. And I'm in line at the pharmacy at Costco, and the guy behind me says, hey, your shoes don't match. And the pharmacist, without even looking up, says, he's wearing shoes. So, they know. And I was going in there for years without anyone saying anything. And then they kind of hassled me at one point, and I just showed them a letter from the Secretary of State saying there's no law that says that, you can't be in here without shoes. And it is something where people can have a rule, and they can, what's the word I was looking for? Enforce. That's it. Enforce that rule. But there's no law that I've ever heard. Now, the airport
True.
one's interesting. I got in the habit for a while after I took my shoes off when I had to do that. I'd take my shoes off to go through TSA checkpoints, and then I just wouldn't put them back on. And then I just didn't put them on to begin with, and I just walked through. Not a problem for years. And once getting on a Southwest flight, the guy at the counter says you have to wear shoes. I said, why? He goes, it's the law. I said, no, it's actually, there's no law about that. He goes, well, it's my law. I said, nope, there's no such thing. He goes, well, it's like if you don't wear shoes, I'm not going to let you on the flight. So I put them on just enough to get by him. Then I took them off when I was on the jetway. And then annoyingly, he had to run down the jetway for something, and he saw me and he got like furious. It's like, all right. So I put them back on. Now, here's the thing that's interesting about this. He was kind of right. When you get an airplane ticket, you're actually entertain. God, I can't even think of the words that start with E today. You are entering into a contract with the airline, and they are giving you the right to fly on their plane, contingent on certain things. And one of them is they can remove you from the plane for any reason, and it explicitly says for being in bare feet. Now, if you look into why, that was written in like the 60s, early 70s, when they wanted to keep hippies off the plane.
Oh, wow.
And they just never changed it. And there's no reason for it. It's just one of those things. So, I go back and forth depending on whether it seems like someone's going to give me a hard time or not. I'm not trying to,
Yeah.
I don't want to be combative, but I can't say I don't enjoy it.
Oh, I'm surprised you're able to get into Costco and successfully like that, because in their bylaws, they do say,
Oh,
that you have
really?
to wear shoes.
Oh,
Yeah.
never had an issue there. The other grocery stores that I go to, again, I've had one person make one comment, and then I go, all right, next time I'll, do that. And I never do. And I love to say that on a hot summer day, going into the produce section in bare feet and standing by the produce when the mister is going off. That's like the closest thing you can do to being a kid running through the sprinkler when you're an adult.
Right.
So when did you start your barefoot journey, if you will?
I guess it was gradual. Once I got out of college, I was, as I was just regular life, I just started doing it more. I had a job. I worked in quick printing for about 10 years, and the owner worked without shoes. So yeah, that was awesome. So I started working without shoes, and sometimes I'd walk to work without shoes, and it was a great experience. I enjoyed it so much.
What about the rest of your family? Are they doing it as well?
My wife was a hardcore barefooter when she was younger. She doesn't so much anymore, but she doesn't care about my, going barefoot. She's not embarrassed or anything like that. So, and my son, he's just, he's content to wear shoes. So I don't push it.
It's so funny. You said she's not embarrassed. It never occurred to me to ask my wife how she felt when we were together and I was in bare feet. And in bare feet is a weird way of saying it, when I wasn't wearing shoes. And I'll have to ask her. She certainly has never said anything. And of course, the number of things that I could possibly do that would embarrass her way beyond not wearing shoes is just legion. So I'm sure this one's just yeah, that's no big deal compared to the other stuff he says and does. So then you decided at some point, though, even though your son is not particularly in a barefoot lifestyle, which, by the way, I can imagine for kids, there'd be more attention to how other people respond and peer pressure, et cetera. So I would never push it as well. But what made you think, okay, I got to spread the word and then decide to write and illustrate a book?
What was my motivation for
Yeah,
that?
why that versus any of the myriad other ways that one could try to get the word out?
Well, it's just a fun topic for me. And I felt like there was enough need in culture to talk about it, or, to bring it up in a book form with kids to be exposed to, because too often, for whatever reason, parents are like, okay, we're going, put your shoes on, let's go. It's like the default all the time. And so you get, kids are conditioned that, okay, I'm going out, I need to put my shoes on. And I felt like I wanted to counteract that a little bit, and present another way, in a way that broke the paradigms that people have about going barefoot. And in this book, it's based in a beach town, because it's, I guess people, there was a lot of things, activities you can do barefoot that you do at the beach, but some things you can carry over in non-beach environments. And so it's 44 pages, 44 fully illustrated pages. And I never thought I would have that much material, on the subject. I just started doing it, right? And I thought, oh, but what about that? And I could do that. And then it came in like a rhyme. It's prose.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's actually a song. I'm a musician as well. So it's a rap song. And you can download the audiobook. It's literally a musical audiobook that goes along with it. And again, that's the type of thing that, it's music. It's got a very strong hook for the chorus. And, it's one of those things that kind of gets in you. Music has a way of, getting inside of you and in your head as well. So I wanted just to, push the envelope, so to speak, and help people break free from some paradigms. As I did more research about the benefits of going barefoot, man, I'm really glad I did, and I'm really glad you're doing podcasts like this, because it really is something that needs to be addressed. The whole movement thing, being barefoot while you're moving, so important in the development of children. Huge. And, I went to, I worked at the public school system as well. I did that for about 14 years. And I started out, and progressively, I saw things that were happening that were more regulations, more restrictions on children. For example, and basically where that came from in the policy making for schools was they were fearful of lawsuits.
Yeah.
So they would make these rules like, okay, for example, no monkey bars. Okay, you can't be on the monkey bars. Now you talk to people, and I'll mention this other woman right now. I might as well. Her name is Angela Hanscom. She wrote the book Balanced and Barefoot.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a fantastic book. Oh my goodness. If you could get her on your show, dude, that would
I'm
be amazing.
I'm making a note right now because I should have and didn't think of it.
She is an occupational therapist by profession, and she reads the mail of culture in the public school. And even in American culture or Western culture, I would say Western culture, because it's not just America, it's also like England and other English speaking countries, something like that, whatever you want to say. But she assesses in the first part of the book, it's an epidemic of developmental disabilities, statistically compounded over the decades of problems that our children are currently facing because of lack of physical movement in an unstructured outdoor environment. And she even goes to, and as far as saying, with shoes on.
Yeah.
There's a section of the book that talks about it's okay to go barefoot, and it's probably better for them to be barefoot.
Yeah.
I got to read. I've been reading the book lately, and I got to read like some of she. The first part of the book is so like, oh my gosh, all the problems like she addresses, like why can't my child sit still? Why does my child need therapy? Why can't my child pay attention? Why can't my child physically keep up? Why is poor posture the new norm? Why are they frail like grandmother's fine china? Why does my child fall so often?
Mm.
Why is my child so aggressive? Have difficulty reading? So emotional? Why doesn't my child like to play? It's and it's all and she's presenting all these things, and she's giving the stats. So if you're a numbers person, it's not just her opinion. She's in the field as
Yeah.
an OT. She did the research with the percentages of increase and the amount of all the kids are have developmental disabilities. There's not enough OT people to go around. And she's saying, look, part of the problem, basically the root cause is we're not getting enough physical movement outside in unstructured free play.
Interesting.
And while you're there, take their shoes off.
We've had, I'm not suggesting, or I'm not, how do I want to say this? I'm not a doctor and I don't play one on TV
Correct.
or the internet, and there's no science behind what I'm about to say, but there is a not insignificant amount of anecdotal information that is spontaneously given to us. And this is that I have parents of kids with ADD, ADHD, autism who say, my kids only want to wear your shoes and they're functionally better. And I said, especially for the ADD, ADHD thing, I said, I think I know why from a neurological standpoint. I would contend that the stimulation they're getting from either being barefoot or being in shoes like ours rather than big, thick cushion things has a similar impact to Ritalin. Ritalin is a mild stimulant. When you haven't been letting your brain feel things and then you let it feel again, it's a stimulating effect. And in the same way that when I was living in New York City, I used to joke that the best place for me to meditate was on a subway because the noise of the subway was just a little louder than my thinking. And it was surprisingly easy for me to concentrate there or just relax there. And this is a thing that no one has researched yet, and I really would like to. There was research in Japan years ago that showed that kids who were barefoot were developing socially more quickly than those who weren't. And they theorized it's because they had to pay attention to what they were doing with their feet and how people were responding to them. And so it just accelerated their awareness about how to take care of themselves and how that worked just in relation to other people.
There's a professor, his name is Stephen Heppel, and he's based in England, but several years ago he was commissioned to do research on how to make schools better. And there are multiple facets to this, but going barefoot in school, having a shoeless learning environment was a big part of it.
Interesting.
And oh yeah. He wrote the article. In fact, what I'll do is I'm gonna any resource that I'm gonna talk about today, I'm gonna put down in my blog and I'll make it available for everybody. Okay.
Perfect. That'd be great.
So and I have a link to his his research. First of all, we need to understand that shoeless schools, I depict that in the book. I wanted to depict that in the book because people need to know it really is a thing.
Yeah.
Because most people are like, are you kidding me? A shoeless school environment? That's crazy. But it's not. It's actually, here they can't really, figure out why, but as they do the analysis, grades are improving, bad behaviors are decreasing, school maintenance costs are decreasing.
Mm.
So, I mean, that's a trifecta right there. Better academics, kids are able to concentrate better, less bullying, cleaner schools,
Very interesting.
lower costs. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that's pretty good. That's a good thing.
Yes, I would argue that is true. That is fascinating. There was a thought that I had that just flew right out of my brain. So this whole idea about the benefits of barefoot beyond just your own personal thing, just how fun it can be, how good it feels. And of course, for people who haven't really tried it, I know, in fact, I'm going to toss this one out there. What would you recommend? I have some thoughts about this. I think I haven't really entertained this thought before, so I'm watching them kind of bubble up into my head. If somebody hasn't tried being barefoot in public, what would you suggest they do? What would you think they might need to be on the lookout for or aware of or attentive to? I'm not thinking about surfaces. I'm thinking about what might be happening inside their mind, for example, or whatever else you can think of that would be that might give people the willingness just to give it a shot.
Well, in the book, I address that on a kid's level. One of the first things it says is that at first it feels prickly. The ground is much rougher, but as I continue, my bare feet get tougher. And so what I'm saying is that, it's normal when you start going barefoot to feel like, oh my gosh, everything feels so loud. I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then, but if you push past that, it's like, oh yeah, okay. It's almost like you learn to appreciate.
Mm.
And that's the next phrase of the book. Avoiding sharp objects like sticks and sandburrs, I learned to appreciate different textures.
It's interesting. I have the idea that your feet get tougher, while you definitely do over a not insignificant amount of time. The skin does get a little thicker, but not like what people think, where they think your feet become like a baseball glove and it protects you from everything. My suspicion is that at first, that feeling you described is from the fact that you haven't been getting that stimulation and that your brain is a little hypersensitive.
Right.
So what your brain does really well in all circumstances is it's really good at filtering out unnecessary information. It's like one of the biggest functions that it has. Yeah. And so over time, you actually learn that you don't need to be that hyper reactive, hyper responsive because it's not problematic. And so it's just that you're getting used to something. You get more attentive to what is or isn't something you need to pay attention to. There's so many things that I wish I had done had I the crystal ball and known what my barefoot experience was going to lead to, because I would have taken an imprint of my foot to show my crazy ass flat feet and then how those have changed. And the other is doing some way of measuring my reflex arc, just how quickly I stepped off of things, because actually there's a third, because I don't feel like I've become numb or not feeling. I feel like I'm much more attentive. And if something's bad, I'm just off of it more quickly, and mostly as a reflex, something intentional. And I also think my feet have become, in addition to stronger, that's kind of a no-brainer, but I also think they've become more flexible. And that allows me to kind of things that when I first started doing this, things that I used to step on that were uncomfortable now are like a foot massage. And the number of things that I step on that are uncomfortable has gotten to be very, very small. Now, pointy cactus things, that's a whole different story. In the normal world, I mean, so I have a slightly different take on what happens as you progress in this experiment. But one thought that just popped in my head, and if I don't say it, I'll forget it. What cracks me up is when I am running around barefoot, is people will say, but what if you, and they fill in the blank with things that just don't happen. What if you step on whatever? Or my favorite is, what if you step in dog shit? And I say, when's the last time you did that? And they go, well, I don't know, 20 years ago. I said, well, why are you going to start now?
Yeah. I mean, it's always like some of the worst things I've ever imagined never happened to me.
Like what?
Well, I'm just saying it's a phrase.
Oh,
Sometimes
yes, yes, yes.
worst things that we imagine just never happen.
Or if they
So
do,
where's the issue? It's in our heads.
yeah,
It's in our heart. Some fear comes up like, well, what if? I mean,
yeah.
it's paralyzing.
Well, I will confess, I've stubbed my toe twice in the last 15 years. So,
It happens. I mean, yeah, I mean, it happens. I mean, there's risks everywhere. And you get in a car to drive somewhere, it's a risk. You
yeah.
go into the kitchen to cook something, boil water, it's a risk.
It is true. I mean, and to be clear, I did the same thing twice. Once I was at my sister's house. I'm walking up the driveway. I didn't notice that the garage pad was about 2 inches higher than the driveway. And so I
Yeah,
stubbed my toe.
I hear you.
And then I'm in downtown Boulder and I'm walking with a friend and we're walking on the sidewalk. And I didn't notice that one of the little tree areas, one of the rocks they had surrounding the tree had somehow escaped. It was trying to go somewhere else. I don't know where. And it was in the middle of the sidewalk and I just wasn't paying attention because I was engrossed in the conversation and
Mhm.
stubbed my toe there. And so I mean, many people will find this to be horrible, but I had to have a Band-Aid on my toe for almost 24 hours. I mean, that was a big deal.
It happens. But I think that's that's what we need to get free of, that fear.
Yeah.
Especially with, as we help our kids develop, because this is not just like a preference thing. I mean, yes, it is a preference thing there is that aspect of it, but it's also a huge developmental thing.
Yeah. How do you
Because
say more about
if
that?
you're putting your kids' feet in shoes all the time, those feet are not getting strengthened.
Right.
And you Google something like, is it okay to go barefoot all the time? And usually you'll get some expert who's a podiatrist who will say, oh, well, going barefoot is good, but you really need to have your feet in shoes in order to develop the support that they need to function well, right? You're shaking our heads, right? It's totally okay. So why are they saying that? I mean, let's just be honest, and I don't mean to insult any podiatrists. Okay, but really, what's your motive there?
Yeah.
I mean, do you make a significant income of your profession from orthotics?
Do you know where it's really hard to find a podiatrist?
Where
Any place where they don't have indoor plumbing. Any place where they're not wearing the shoes that we wear. And I had a friend who went to Everest Base Camp and he's watching these Sherpas who are just like flying up the mountain. And at best, they were wearing flip-flops. And he's,
Yeah,
these amazing hiking boots and they are totally fine and never had a problem. And
exactly.
it's this is the counterfactual thing that I like is we're so in our own private Idaho here in the West that we're shocked when we go somewhere where they're doing the exact opposite and they're totally fine. And some people will then go, huh, wait a minute, that's the opposite of what I thought. That's a counterfactual. Maybe there's something to that. And other people will just think they're weird, they're unusual, they're special. And nope. So,
Yeah. I mean, you look at a guy like Paul Thompson, who you've interviewed with. He's the barefoot podiatrist in Australia.
yeah,
He lets his kids go barefoot all the time. And, he recently posted something on social media. Those kids' feet are like, I don't know what you want, Superman feet. I mean, they're like, he shows them climbing rocks and they're like rolling down the hills and, like they're just doing all these physical activities that kids should be doing
yeah.
outdoors and barefoot. And they're like healthy, happy kids.
Well, and I'm going to brag a little bit because this is something that I just discovered. I want to be clear that if people listen to this are not children, which I'm assuming most aren't, you can start this whole thing at any age. There's no reason to wait. There's research showing that people in their 90s, if they start doing weight training, get stronger. And there's a study, it's the RSI study. It's a reflexive study. Basically, you put your hands on your hips and you videotape this at least 240 frames a second, super slow-mo. And you jump up and down as quickly as you can. You want to use as little knee bend as possible. Basically, you're just bouncing off your feet as quick and as fast as you can. And what you measure is the amount of time you're on the ground and the amount of time you're in the air. And you just divide the amount of time you're in the air by the amount of time you're on the ground. And you get an RSI score. And if you are a very accomplished athlete, your score will be over 2.5. If you're an extremely accomplished athlete, it'll be over 3. And anything over like 3.5, you're a freak of nature. And so I'm going to be 61 years old in just a little bit. And I got a 2.6. And this is it's really fundamentally all about foot strength. And I don't know what I would have scored 15 years ago before I started doing this. But, I'm almost 61 years old and I'm outperforming professional athletes who are half my age.
Yeah.
And so, no reason not to start.
Going back to Angela Hanscom, the author of Balanced and Barefoot. I mean, she was, to her own admission, what we would call a helicopter mom. Okay. I think she has 2 daughters, and she would just make sure that everything was safe for them. Everything was protected, everything was sanitized. And so she realized that she was doing her child a disservice, because there's so many things that children should be exposed to in an outdoor environment, in unstructured free play, barefoot.
Yeah.
That will strengthen their immunities, build their arches, strengthen their feet, and increase their stamina, stimulate their imagination and cognitive development. Her daughter had, I think, if I remember correctly, had flat feet. Okay. Up until the time that she got this revelation, Angela got this revelation about being outside and being barefoot. And then she just, let her daughter go without shoes. And what do you think happened? She got her feet back.
Yeah.
She got arches, and she didn't need orthotics or anything like that.
And let's be clear, arch height is predominantly genetic, but arch strength is what determines how much you're maximizing the arch that you have. I was at a chiropractic conference a while back, and the guy running it said to the other chiropractors, if you need to pay Sashin $5 to feel his feet, pay him, because at that time they were flatter. He says, so they're not what you would think is ideal from a just sort of visual perspective, but then check out how strong they are. And that's the important part. And this is the thing that I harp on, is that it's about strength and flexibility, not about some magic number of, how high your arch is or not.
Yes.
Do you know why, this is a wacky tangent, do you know why, because I don't, if you had flat feet, that kept you out of the Army back in the 50s and 60s?
That's a good question, because that is true.
I got to look that up. I have no doubt that it was based on some complete bit of mythology that had no basis in fact.
Maybe it was because you didn't have enough strength.
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. We'll have to look into this. This could be a fun one. And if anyone knows, let me know.
It's like Paul Thompson is saying, you build strength from the ground up, your feet, and the rest follows.
Professional powerlifters say that for every lift they do. They said, look, even the bench press starts with your feet.
There you go.
And we've gone to powerlifting competitions and had a bunch of lifters like try on our shoes at our booth. And then we've had more than a handful say, I'm about to go compete. Can I wear these? And then they go and set a personal best. And yes, it could be psychological. It could be a placebo effect, could be something, but they come back almost without question or without exception. See, there's another E word that I couldn't find. Almost without exception, saying, I just felt like I was really pushing out of the ground better than I was before because their toes weren't being squeezed together. And if you look at people who are doing the deadlift in particular, they will usually be in barefoot or be in socks or be in some pretty low profile shoe, but usually still too narrow for their foot. So there's that component as well. And then guys doing the squat, that cracks me up because they think they need squat shoes, which if you look at a squatting shoe, it's basically a wooden sole, stiff wooden sole with a bit of a heel lift. So the shoe does nothing. It's basically the floor at an angle. And the guy who invented that was someone who had like short femurs and needed that because the way his body worked, he couldn't squat all the way down. And so came up with this idea of just elevating his heel, which helped. And then everyone's still like, oh, I guess we need to elevate our heels. Like, no.
That was just for me.
Yeah. I mean, that happens. That is the nature of the professional sporting world is someone does something a little different, does really well, and everyone goes, well, we better do that too. Otherwise, we may be at a disadvantage without understanding what the thing is or what it actually does or doesn't do.
Yeah. Funny, crazy.
So as we bring this into a soft landing, how are you making people aware of the book?
Well, through podcasts like this, and organic, awareness of it. I am going to start advertising a little bit more because that's part of, the marketing of things. But it was released in November, so it's pretty new, still a new book. It's a baby, yeah. But like my desire, is to equip parents really to be aware, to break free from really mindsets that are stifling their children.
Yeah.
And it has to do with being barefoot, but it also has to do with getting outside and doing unstructured free play. And the resources that I'm going to spell out in the blog that I'll put on the website will list these, like Balanced and Barefoot by Angela Hanscom, and another one is 1,000 Hours Outside, and that's by Virginia Urich. You would like this too.
Wait, who's it by?
Virginia Urich.
Writing it down. What I can tell you from a marketing perspective is this: if you go after mommy bloggers and your basic pitch is, do you want your kids to grow up with fucked up feet? I was thinking of a better way to say that, but I couldn't think of a word with E. So if you don't want your kids to, have their feet get messed up, which could be bad for balance and strength and agility and all those things, then we need to talk. And because no parent wants to put their kid at a disadvantage, ironically, if you make the same argument to them, they may have an issue. But if you say it's about their kids, then they can be more attentive. And I say this because I have a friend who started a footwear company for kids, and that was her entire pitch to parents. That was her whole marketing, was going after mommy bloggers. We are, by the way, going down in sizes to get smaller and smaller to be able to accommodate the people who think their kids need something or for when their kids do. But just as an FYI, that would be the angle that I would take if I were in your not shoes. So if people want to find out more about your book and get a copy and hear the song that goes with it and everything else you're doing, please tell them how they can do that.
Sure. Yeah. You could go to barfooza.com, BARFOOZA.com. And if you can't remember that, I also purchased igobarefoot.com, and that will roll over to barfooza.com.
There you go.
And there you can order the book. You can get the download of the audio book. The blog will be there with the links. It's under Footnotes to Parents. That's what it's called, Footnotes to Parents. And I'll add all these links to it, which will help equip you as parents to really help in your child's development.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Koby, this has been an absolute pleasure. I want to thank you for this. This happened. You spontaneously and without any provocation sent me a copy of the book, and I said, "Oh yeah, we got to talk." And here we are. So I'm so glad you did that, and so glad we were able to have this chat. And for everyone else, I hope you do go to igobarefoot.com or barfooza.com and check it out. Grab a copy for yourself or a parent that you know who has a child that you would like to help, grow up happy, healthy, etc. And for everyone else, just a reminder, go to jointhemovement.com to find all the previous episodes, all the way you can engage with us. And again, like and share and and give us a thumbs up and give us a review somewhere. And if you have any recommendations, anyone you want on the show, I'm always looking for someone to talk to, someone who thinks I have a case of cranial rectal reorientation syndrome. I can't seem to get them to actually join me on the podcast, mostly because in the conversation we have leading up to the podcast, I think it becomes clear that they're not going to have a good time. Or not the time they expect. But again, if you have anything, comments, requests, etc., drop me an email. I'm at MOVE, at jointhemovement.com. But most importantly, just go out and have fun and live life feet first.